Let's talk about the Schmo and Ariel Helwani. This is a feud that has been going on in the MMA industry, the media industry, for a couple of years now, and it recently came to the surface again on the Real Eyes Recognize podcast with Kevin Holland. There was a clip that went all over social media. We're going to watch it right here, and then I'll give my thoughts after. I have seen this clip already, but there's a number of points in this just like 20-second clip that I think we can unpack, and a lot of things that I think are interesting about the industry itself. So let's go watch that clip right now.
I love everybody in the sport, but I don't like him. The way you just mentioned about your story about your uncle or your grandpa, about when you're coming up, oh, his time will come. He big time me, but when I tried to introduce myself to him in 2018, and we've just had kind of just never been on the right footing, called him out to a charity grappling match, raise money, charity, and turn into charity basketball or whatever, but he won't do anything that doesn't help himself first, is kind of what I noticed. With my character, if I interview an athlete and they walk away not liking the interview, then I didn't do my job. I'm self-deprecating, but the expense to showcase the athlete's personalities and make them look good and feel good. And I sprinkle in some good journalism in there, but I also ask some fun questions because I got to keep things entertaining. What I feel like with his style, there's an agenda. First,
let's kind of just mention the fact, and I didn't get to show the actual question there, but this is a much longer podcast, and obviously, it's smart of them to clip this out. People are, going to get attention on it, and we're even doing a video on this myself, but we got to remember that he was asked this question. It's not like he brought this up out of the blue. As far as the whole email story, I don't know if that's true or not. If that did happen, I mean, that sucks. I mean, imagine, meeting someone that's big time in the industry, and they treat you like that. That would feel pretty crappy, but I don't know which side of the equation that this sort of fits. Any interaction I've had with Ariel in my past has always been very good. But I've also had great experiences with Dave as well. Like, he's a really, really nice guy, and I'll talk a little bit more about him more in this interview. But as far as like him bringing up that story, like, it's obviously a sore spot for him, and it's something that I think, him being honest about, who cares? Like, I see a lot of people on social media saying that he's like obsessed with Ariel and all these different things. I don't think that's the case. I think he's just being honest about an experience he had with someone it's pretty prominent in the industry. So that first part, again, don't know if that actually happened. If that did happen, yeah, that would be pretty bad, but it could have also been maybe some miscommunication back what happened. I mean, this is 2018. It's, a number of years ago. So there's that as well. As far as them doing like the charity grappling match and all that stuff, trying to set that up, again, you know what I'm going to say here if you've watched my videos before. I mean, these two should have just talked about this behind closed doors and just resolved this. I think doing a grappling match or doing some sort of challenge here is just something where, it looks like you're going to get people divided and people pick one side or the other. And how fans get, especially with fighting and any sort of matchups or anything like that, people are going to take a side here. So I feel like if anything, that's going to, cause more of a divide. I know they were trying to raise money for charity and all that. That's good. But I still think this could have been handled. I mean, let's put this in a different frame of mind here. What if they had talked about this, they had resolved the issue, but they did the match anyways? I think that would be good for everyone. That would have been the better solution here, just from my vantage point. But maybe he couldn't get a hold of Ariel. Maybe Ariel, he did reach out and he didn't get back to him. I don't know what happened. But again, I think with something like this, you got to kind of, it'd be good to see them deal with this behind closed doors before it gets out everywhere, because then people have their opinions with such limited knowledge. Okay, here's another key part here. He won't do anything that doesn't help himself. Okay, so I don't necessarily think this is true. Again, there's things that I don't necessarily agree with Ariel on in some of the interviews that he's done, but I don't think that's always the agenda for him, is that he won't do anything that doesn't help himself. I think that's a little harsh, but again, I understand the frustration from his end because he had not a very good experience. He's going to have a different version or a different view of Ariel than other people would as well. But I watching Ariel's stuff, I don't get the idea that he's just doing things that doesn't help himself in certain regards. I mean, obviously he's getting guests on for specific reasons, to push certain things, to push certain storylines and narratives and stuff, and that's just part of the media. But I don't think it's always in a way to like be malicious or to be sort of self-serving, so to speak. So kind of going to push back a little bit on this, but again, I think Dave, it's understandable why he's feeling this way.
If I interview an athlete and they walk away not liking the interview, then I didn't do my job.
So I think this was the part in the clip that a lot of people got wrong, in my opinion, or misinterpreted. And this is just my take on it. I think what he was saying is not that you got to suck up to a fighter and you got to only answer questions they want or things like that and not do journalism. I think what he meant here is that you want to have good relationships with fighters and managers. You want them to come away knowing that you're going to give them a good interview, whether that's research, whether it's not taking stuff out of context and making them look bad. That's what I think he meant here. I think you can still do very good journalism, but also still establish good relationships with the people that you're interviewing. The Schmo area, Ariel, a lot of us, myself, we don't have the luxury of the UFC, scheduling interviews for us. You have to get them on your own through management or through fighters or different ways. So those relationships are really key. If you have not so good relationships with a fighter or manager, they might not do interviews with you, right? I've talked about this before with a manager that will not let me interview his clients. So, it's very important to sort of establish those relationships. And that's what I think he's sort of touching on here. And, we've seen examples of, things taken out of context. I remember a couple of years ago, Lauren Murphy did a live stream with a big media outlet, and she made one comment about Eddie Alvarez on the stream, and that was like a full page article story on their site. And Lauren felt pretty bad about that because it's like, look, I barely talked about that. It was just like a little small thing, and it turned into this big thing about her going after her former coach Eddie Alvarez on The Ultimate Fighter. And so that's what I think he's talking about here. We had a recent example of this with kind of along the same lines, and I talked about this in the other video with Ariel and Jamal Hill, where Ariel brought up sort of this narrative with Yuri Prohaska in the interview that Jamal was implying that he was scared, but that really wasn't the narrative. There's the one tweet, but Jamal was very respectful towards Yuri. I think that's kind of what he was getting at here, as far as you want the fighter to come away knowing that they're going to get a good interview, for whether it's research, or they're going to get a fair interview, or all these things. I think that's what people want when it comes to the content. And I think that's what he was getting at here. So I think a lot of people got this wrong, honestly, and they were saying, he's just sucking up to all the fighters. No, I think he asked very good questions, but I think there's a way of doing it where you can still establish that good relationship.
I'm self-deprecating, but the expense to showcase the athlete's personalities and make them look good and feel good.
And that's another quick thing here too. And this is a broader topic as well that I'm sure I could do in another video. A lot of these fighters, they're busy. They're doing training camps. They have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, this is a topic I discussed sort of at length with the whole Paddy Pimblett situation with Ariel Helwani, where I was on Ariel's side 100% on that. But again, athletes don't have a lot of time. They're doing media. They're taking time out of their training schedule to do an interview with you. You want to be able to make sure they're using their time properly. The fighter is, going to get a good experience out of it, and it's going to help them. There's a lot of fighters I interview that are prospects. I'm essentially helping them out in a way because a lot of people don't know who they are. But on the flip side, I might interview a UFC champion who's way more popular than I am, and they're sort of helping me out in a way by getting me more eyeballs in an interview. So it kind of works both ways, but it's kind of along the same lines here where, you guys are both kind of helping each other out. And I know, again, the purists, the journalism people will be like, it's not their job to do that. I think there is an importance of having that good relationship. So again, I'm with the Schmo here. I agree with him 100%.
And I sprinkle in some good journalism.
And I'm going to push back on this. I think Schmo does great journalism. I think some of the stuff that he puts out there, the questions are good. I think he asks some hard-hitting questions in certain interviews, and I think he really gets to some of the stuff that we all want to know about. And the thing that he does so well is he will go to gyms and get fighters in their element. How many times do we see a fighter on media day or at, in like a UFC media environment, and they're uptight, they're not in their environment, they're cutting weight. You go to their gym, you're getting them right in their element here, and you're usually getting a better interview that way. So I think the Schmo does an excellent job. I think it's an absolute joke that he's not nominated for Journalist of the Year. And I know people say he's playing a character, but look at the information he's getting out of these fighters. Go on every major MMA website right now, and you're going to find an interview that him or his girlfriend Helen have done. They do a fantastic job going to gyms all the time, getting really good interviews, and they hustle like crazy. They don't just do the typical UFC media week schedule. They go above and beyond to get you guys good content. And I feel like a lot of people overlook that, and it's such an important part of the industry because not a lot of people are doing it, and they have the advantage of obviously living in Las Vegas and getting that content. But there's media members that do live in Las Vegas, and they don't really do that too often. So listen, I think Schmo's downplaying the good journalism thing. I think he does a really good job, and I don't think he gets enough credit, honestly. And you can just tell by the response to this video that he doesn't get enough credit for the work that he's doing in the industry.
In there, but I also ask some fun questions because I got to keep.
That's another key thing too. Ask some fun questions. So a lot of people, and we'll talk more about this later in the video about the whole, he's playing a character and all this different stuff. Look, if David had just been David and gone into this, yeah, he would still be successful. I have no doubt about that. But I don't think he'd be as successful as he is now because he stands out. Branding is so important in sports media now, especially with the fact that media is changing so rapidly. It's not about the outlet you work for necessarily now. It's about the brand. Look at Ariel Helwani himself leaving ESPN, and he has such a strong brand that he was fine going out on his own because he's Ariel Helwani. He's not Ariel Helwani of ESPN. People are not like, I forget who that guy is. They know him because he has such a strong brand here. For the Schmo to go out here and do a character and to be in that character, I mean, that's hard work to do, and to come up with good questions and to do all these different things. I just really feel like what he's doing here is different and it stands out. And obviously there's an audience for it. And again, we'll discuss that a little bit later.
Keep things entertaining. What I feel like with his style, there's an agenda.
Okay, so with him, that's the last point that he said there about with his style, there's an agenda. I don't think it's like that all the time, but I do think that he does things in a way to get the type of response that you want for like a really juicy headline or something like that. I mean, go look at the interview he had with the whole James Krause situation, where Krause basically admitted that he was, betting, and I'm sure that didn't help his case with the whole stuff that he's dealing with right now. Like things like that, I feel like are, and look, it's Ariel's job to get the best story possible. I think there's ways you can do it where you don't have to go that deep and maybe get someone in trouble like that. But I think at the same time, I think there are times when, like again with the Yuri thing, I'll just bring that up. With him talking about how Jamal was scared of him, that's not really, or saying that Jamal saying that Yuri was scared of him. That's not really what happened. And I feel like that was a way to get Yuri to give a response of saying like, well, Yuri didn't. Yuri's a classy guy. He didn't say anything really bad about Jamal at all in that interview. But him saying that, what do you make of Jamal implying that you're scared to take this fight? What do you think of that? He's trying to get a quote out of Yuri that's going to be then used, and it's going to be on every major website. What if Yuri had said, oh, screw that guy, I'm so much better than him? That would be on every headline possible, right? So I know that's part of the job, but I think as well, there is a bit of an agenda in doing that, and you're kind of trying to bring something out of the fighter that the fighter might not necessarily say. It's kind of, listen, it's a tough line to walk. I walk it very, neatly as well here as well when it comes to asking questions, because look, if a fighter says something about you in another interview and you quote them directly, you got to tell that other fighter about it. That's how journalism works. But at the same time, you don't want to take anything out of context. So it's a very tough line to walk. The thing I will push back on here is I don't think it's always like that with Ariel as far as there being an agenda. I think sometimes he pushes the envelope a little bit, but that's part of the job. Like you have to walk that line here. So again, I kind of have a neutral take here where I see what the Schmo's saying and I think he's partially right, but I also think Ariel doesn't do that all the time. So it's a tough industry. It's tough to get people's attention when it comes to getting the most out of fighter interviews. And I totally understand that as well. And let's just get back to the Schmo itself. Again, because I saw a lot of response on social media, people making fun of the Schmo, people saying like, he's got to quit the character. It's terrible. That is like the worst advice ever. Oh, he's got to quit doing the character. The character is what got him to where he's at. 273,000 subscribers. The Schmo's completely independent, does not work for an outlet, does not have anyone telling him what to do. He basically decides what content he does. It's so tough to do that. It's so tough to make a living on YouTube, especially in the MMA industry when there's so many other outlets and people creating content and all this different stuff. It's hard to break through, and he's done it. The Schmo, I remember when the Schmo first blew up, it was after that Dana press conference, and I had a lot of people messaging me being like, what do you think of this guy? He's an idiot. And I knew Dave before he basically blew up and became the Schmo. Well, he was still the Schmo then, but he was not as big as he was now. And I told people, I said, just trust me. The guy knows what he's doing. He's well researched. It's not like, yes, it's a gimmick. It might not be your thing, but there's an audience for it. And there clearly is. And this is something I touched on in the Luke Thomas video as well. I feel like a lot of people look at the Schmo as if he's not some sort of big deal in this industry. He absolutely is. When I go to events, there are people all the time asking to take photos with him. He has done such a good job with his branding that like he's one of the most recognizable faces in our industry. Probably him and Ariel are probably two of the most recognizable faces. And you might not like his content. You might not like his style or anything like that, but there's an audience for it and you can't ignore it. And I feel like fans do this so much, this kind of highbrow thing where it's like, oh yeah, his content's terrible. Listen, the audience is there. His videos do extremely well. Especially for someone that's doing this independently. And how the Schmo makes his living aside from YouTube ad revenue is getting sponsorships, and he continues to get sponsors. And here's the other thing about the Schmo that I like. He covers boxing. He covers pro wrestling. He does a bit of everything. He's not just tied into MMA. The Schmo could work for, any sport right now. And it would be the same sort of thing because it works. It's not just, hasn't boxed himself into just doing MMA, which I think is really great. So, and behind the scenes, I'll just tell you guys this right now, because I've known Dave for a while. One of the nicest, most professional guys you'll ever meet. Always says hi to me whenever I'm at events. Anytime I see him or Helen, extremely kind, great people. People don't see that. They see the character. There might be a little jealousy there. There might be a little bit of, oh, I don't like his style there. I get that, but like, he does very good work. And I see a lot of people saying that he is obsessed with Ariel Helwani and all this different stuff. He's not. He was just being honest about a question here. Do I think we're at the point now where this has been talked about a lot? Yes, I do. But I also think that, he's got some grievances. It would be great if these two could resolve it. I don't think they ever will, but it's one of those things where he's just answering honestly. So people are upset for him being honest. Does he want to lie? Like, I think there's a group of people, more than a group of people out there who think that somehow people are immune to criticism. I think if you have grievances with someone, you should be allowed to talk about them, and it shouldn't turn into this, oh, they're obsessed with them and all that. That's not the case here. And again, when people say he's obsessed with Ariel, it's like almost as if like they're saying though he's using Ariel's name to get ahead. He's never done that. He's independent. He's done it on his own. So that's kind of where I don't agree with people at all. all. And then of course there's the people who say that, oh, the media industry sucks. You know, how many times do you hear this? People saying the media industry sucks. No one's good. The media is a joke and all this stuff. Well, you got something different in the Schmo, which is completely different than what we're used to. And people don't like that either. It's like, you can't win. People will always say something sucks, but they'll never tell you something they like, because as I've said before many times in these videos, negativity sells far more than positivity. It just does. And that's where people, it's like, it's built within them to be negative towards certain things. So I think what the Schmo's doing great. You might not like it, but 273,000 people do like it. And that's why he continues to be successful in this industry. And it's just something you can't ignore. Absolutely not at all. This is not anything new. The Schmo is basically Nardwuar. People are familiar, especially here in Canada. I'll show you a little bit of Nardwuar here. This is kind of what the Schmo's character is. It's like a character who's interviewing people, and it's very well done.
Put this in my ball cart for a second. How about I put this in yours? I'll put a whole bunch on the table, and you can pick the one you like. It can be like multiple choice, Sir Henry. How about that?
Okay.
Okay, here's the remaining questions for Henry Rollins. A fan gave you the master tapes for Iggy Pop's Raw Power. That I think was pretty.
So it's more like music stuff that he does. Here's a more recent one. He's still doing it, by the way. Nardwuar is still doing content, which is amazing. But this kind of sounds a little bit like the Schmo. But again, it's alternative media. He's like in Canada, especially, everyone knows who Nardwuar is because of the branding, because he's made himself stand out. And it's actually, this stuff's really funny.
Who are you?
First off, who are you?
Cardi B.
You are Cardi B?
Yeah, I'm Cardi B, yeah.
Welcome to Coachella.
Woo!
Right off the bat, Cardi B, I have a gift for you right here. What can you tell the people about Junie?
Junie B. Jones. I read her book. I used to read her books when I was in 3rd grade.
People have modified her books to fit you, right?
Yeah? Yeah, a lot of people, they modify it for me. Maybe because she's so obnoxious.
Anyways, you get the idea here. This is nothing new. Again, but I think in sports, you really don't see this type of character at press conferences or events and stuff. And I think all the power to him. As far as doing something different, because we need it. Everyone's doing the same thing. Why not try and be a little bit different here? So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? Again, it would be great if they could resolve it. Kind of knowing both, I don't know Ariel that well, but seems like a nice guy. I'm sure they could figure this out if they could somehow just, I don't know, talk it out and figure it out. But this might be one of those things that continues on and they keep doing back and forth and all that. But my sort of thoughts on, I think there's a little bit of truth in here, and I think there's a lot of misconception on the Schmo here. So that's kind of my thoughts on him. Let me know what you think in the comments. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.